tuned in, the place for inspirational Christian talk. It's the Toni Cooper Show.
Thank you so much for listening to the Toni Cooper Show on Detroit's Word Station, WRDT AM 560. And today's show is dedicated to being a servant leader. And the concept started in the 70s with an individual named Robert Greenleaf, who coined the phrase, who came up with this at the time, was a new concept. And the whole idea was, instead of being the boss and the dictator in the company, it was about serving the people, lifting the people up so that they want to work, they want to be engaged, to have a better work environment. And I don't even know when it was. I think it was November. I went to this event with the International Society of Performance Improvement, and an individual was up on stage, and he was talking about this servant leadership stuff. And honestly, in my head, I thought it was stuff. I knew what it was. I understand what it is. I still knew what it was. But I liked some of the things that he had to say. I liked how he talked about his company. It's not very often that a CEO comes up on stage and really, instead of talking about everything that his business does, all he did was talk about the people. Quite honestly, when I walked out of there, I had no idea what his company did. So that should tell you something about what a servant leader is. It's really about the people. And so when we decided to have a show where we really got to hear from the people that are doing it, he was the first person that came to mind. So we are joined today by the CEO and owner of EDSI, which is a workforce development company headquartered in Dearborn, but it's located throughout the United States with a little over 500 employees. And his name is Kevin Schnieders, and thank you so much, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Toni. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And Kevin and I, what we're going to do today, and you are welcome, if you have a question specifically for Kevin throughout this, you feel free to interrupt us at any time by calling us at 313-272-5600 and call us and ask the question. But what we're talking about is, we're going to talk about how he came up with this values for his company and what they are, and we're going to discuss a little bit about what it means to be an effective leader in your business. And we're also going to hear from his employees, who I had the privilege of interviewing and asking questions of last week. And Kevin hasn't heard those responses yet, so he'll get to respond today. But the first thing we want to know is, because I now know what it is, but let's tell our listeners, what is EDSI?
Yeah, thanks, Toni. EDSI is a company, as you mentioned, with a little over 500 employees, and we have locations around the Midwest and Northeast and Southeast, and we do placement work for folks who are currently unemployed, so looking for greater employment, and then we tend to work with those companies that we place them into to help them get better, smarter, faster, as we like to say.
Okay, and your business started when?
Gosh, it was originally founded in '79 by my dad, and so it started way back in '79.
So the story that I would love, if you're willing to share it, is, the first thing is, okay, well, it was founded by your dad, but you didn't want to be a part of the business. So, it wasn't like, okay, it was founded by my dad and you were bred to be in this role. Right. It wasn't what you wanted.
Right, for sure. Yeah, happy to share the story. I think of things in terms of a job, a career, and a calling. Okay. And it just wasn't my calling. Right. I liked the work. We had great experience. I worked there from 7 years old. I put my first training manual together in the garage of our home and worked there for a long time, part-time. As you said, when I got out of college, it wasn't what I was going to be doing. I had a totally different career path. And my dad and I were on vacation with our family, and I asked him how things were going at work outside of what I was seeing. And he told me this really interesting project about placing 50 dislocated steel workers in Pittsburgh. And he said he wasn't going to take the contract because he didn't want to start a new office up in Pittsburgh. And I said, gosh, Dad, that sounds fascinating. I don't know any other private companies that are doing that. I'd love to help you put the training manual together. I was trained as an educator and kind of talked him into doing it along a walk on the beach. So I did the training manual with a group of other talented people and drove that training manual out to Pittsburgh for the first day of class, and I never left. I resigned from my other job on the way back from Pittsburgh, went into his office on Monday and told him this is what I felt called to do to help people.
And you have a company that fascinates me, and what I mean by that is I've never actually counted, but I think I've worked with and trained a little over 150 companies. And so I've had the privilege of walking into all these different businesses. And as I said earlier on the show, you get a vibe immediately when you walk in. It's either a good one or a bad one. And back in the day, it was all of them had cubicles, and no one got to see the person next to them, and some people still work in that environment, and yours is a very open environment. But beyond that, everybody was smiling. Even though they were working and they were intent, it wasn't like a big party was going on. Everybody was smiling, including your administrative assistant. And to me, that says a lot, because I've met numerous administrative assistants that you can tell are waiting for the day they get to quit. Okay. So I want you to just give us how did you develop a culture that is such a positive culture focused on people?
Yeah, I think it starts there, Toni, with just that focus on others, right? The suppression of ego, the death of the ego, as we talked about, and we're just so focused on everyone's happiness. We really aren't afraid to talk about happiness at work. When I do reviews with my direct reports, the most important thing for me is to get their happiness score from 0 to 10. What's going on? How are they feeling? If it's not 10, then we're working to get it to 10. And we try to start there to really talk about it, have the open conversation. In addition to that, we do want people working in areas of strength for them, so that at least 80-90% of the time they're doing things that are really aligned with the natural strengths that they possess.
I think that's a big one, because you see that in schools with kids, you see that in the work environment, and I know that with myself. I know what weaknesses I have, and if I took a position that was like an administrative assistant, I would completely fail. Right. And so knowing what your strengths are and working on your strengths are important. And I would tell the listeners, the same thing is, working in your strengths is so much more rewarding as opposed to working in your weaknesses, because you just don't, it's just draining. It's draining to do the things you don't enjoy doing. And as a company, or for those who are listening, understand that leadership plays a huge role in a company. And I want you to kind of tell me, how important do you think an effective leader is in a business as far as the success or the failure of the company?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, I like to believe, my dad said something to me at a very young age. He said, as soon as you hire your first employee, it stops being about you and it starts being about the company. So we all think of ourselves as being in something together. Having said that, I think it is the responsibility of the leader to set the vision for the company. And we talk a lot about creating the fence post in the backyard. How does that leader define what the boundaries are around behaviors, values, and the expectations for where the company's headed? And that's where I think the leader can have the greatest impact, is to set proper expectations and make sure that it's clear to people. So I'm a big believer that everybody gets up in the morning wanting to do the right thing. Right. Nobody gets up wanting to fail. And so if we can set the expectations around what that looks like as leaders and make it clear, then people will more often than not hit that mark.
And if you go with that, you call them values, right, with the daily ways? Yeah. You created these values, and it's so simple. I've gone into companies, and I told your staff the same thing. I get into companies, and you ask them what their vision or what their mission is, and they look at this document, and it's like the whole entire wall, and no one knows it because it's these drawn-out statements after statements. And yours is very simple, and it's so easy to remember, and I've remembered it since November, so it tells you something. But it's show up, smile, and support. And now before you talk about it, I asked your staff what they feel show up, smile, and support means. So we're going to take a moment, and I want everybody that's listening to realize this, that the values of the company are show up, smile, and support. That's the expectations, that's the goals. And then you have these daily ways to actually do those. So it's not like you said we have show up, smile, and support. You defined what that is and then what the expectations of them are. And I think that's an important aspect that many leaders miss out on, is this is our mission. But then we don't define how to make that mission happen and what those are. So you're going to hear these individuals talk about daily ways.
The daily ways for us, I think what's really been neat about it is that it's set the foundation for us across the company. So we built it into how we do reviews, or if I'm working with a manager and they're having a difficult time, maybe having a difficult conversation with someone, or a way to deliver praise in a positive way, like we use the daily ways as a foundation for this is how you could really improve, because maybe I didn't see how you used your judgment and took initiative today, or whatever that might be, and right. Say that's one of our values, and this is what we're really looking for, to really set the expectation for people, and know that when we do that, managers and others across the company are building upon that same foundation, which is what our daily ways are.
Okay, so the daily ways are what we talked about, what show up, smile, and support actually mean, and that's what we're going to talk about. When we come back, we're going to hear the recording of what show up, smile, and support are on the Toni Cooper Show.
Lord of all the earth, we shout your name, filling up the skies with endless praise.
All right, so we are joined on the Toni Cooper Show. I am your host, Toni Cooper, and I'm joined by Kevin Schnieders, the CEO of EDSI, and I had the privilege of interviewing his staff a couple weeks ago and got to ask them questions. And one of the values of EDSI is show up, smile, and support. And I asked them what that means to them. And we're going to hear in a moment what that means to them, and then we'll get to hear from Kevin. So let's hear what they had to say. What does show up, smile, and support mean?
Well, I think as a young professional, it's cool in a way that to work for an organization who actually does, to your point, Toni, who has a dedicated mission that's more than profits. It's more than making money. That we have a leader in Kevin who thinks about people first. And so I think show up, smile, support is just one way that Kevin shows us that he's out to build a culture that is about people. So for me, it's all about showing up, smiling, and supporting for one another, for our clients, for people who work for our clients, and then everything kind of funnels down from there. So really, I think in all three of those values, people are at the core.
For me, I think directly, I am more of an administrative person in the company. So for me, my customers are more internal. And so I try to apply those values by showing up for the people in the company and supporting them in whatever they need in a positive and professional manner. So trying to be quick, prompt, and have a very positive attitude in dealing with whatever comes my way, because sometimes there's a lot of issues going on at the same time. You have to prioritize, and just trying to make sure that those things are handled as quickly as possible.
The values really are, it's culture, and really quite simply, I would say it's why people love working for EDSI.
Show up, smile, and support are the behaviors of our environment, and they're not just in how we're interacting peer-to-peer, but we're interacting with our customers.
I appreciate the simplicity of show up, smile, and support, and the culture that it builds really quickly with those three words.
So that's what your staff said, show up, smile, and support, or would you agree with it, and how would you take it further?
Yeah, thanks, Toni. And I love listening to their comments. I'm blessed to work with so many talented people, and you got a chance to meet 5 of the bright stars in our organization, and they had so many nice things to say about you. So thanks for your time with them. Show up, smile, and support, they summarized really, really well. I think we do try to keep it simple, because when people are faced with challenges at work, they have to return to something. And we wanted it to be something that had that alliteration that they could remember and was simple, so that when they were challenged, they could rely on that for their foundation of their behavior.
And there's something about that when it's your foundation. And if we took it further and just explained what each one of those mean, I want to go through the smile one for a moment, because you didn't get to hear them say this. But one of the things they said is it's not just that you have a smile on your face, because I know that's what somebody had said to me before. I was talking to somebody, go, yeah, we're going to have this company, and it's show up, smile. And they're like, who walks around smiling all day long? And I'm like, well, I don't know, I do. But not everybody is that way. So what is really the essence of smile?
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. And we didn't get this right away. I am the guy that walks around with a big, goofy smile on his face like you, Toni. And as I traveled around to the offices, they didn't get it initially either. So we had the values before we have what we refer to as the daily ways. And we don't expect people to remember the daily ways. I can't recite them. There's 4 under each one of our core values. So it's only important to us that we've defined what those words mean to us as an organization. So smile, for example, one of the daily ways is I wonder. And just keeping this sense of wonder in your life, so that you're not explicitly challenging people on their views, but you're wondering, well, that's interesting that they think differently than I do, and I wonder what the future possibilities could be for us in the organization. I am self-aware is part of being positive and smiling. I treat my colleagues like customers. and I am part of the solution. So those really, we started to write the daily ways out of listening to employees who were saying, I don't have a big smile on my face all day long, or I'm very quiet, I don't express myself that way. And we wanted to really respond to that to say, no, you're living our values because you're doing these things, and how we define that word.
And that's what I think is great. So SMILE is really just living out the value of being positive, being open and listening to each other. And then the show up. So let's go through each one of these and discuss it. And then we'll talk about how people can actually implement it into their environment. Great. So let's talk about, so what does show up mean?
Yeah, the daily ways under show up, one is quite simply, I do arrive on time, because that is something that's important to us, to show value to one another. When you're not showing up on time, you're telling that person whatever you were doing was more important than their time, and we don't want to send that message. I'm the best me that I can be today. That's our only expectation for our employees, that they really are maximizing who they are, and we're helping them to become the best individual that he or she can become.
So showing up for themselves.
Exactly right. Great way to summarize that. I use my judgment and I take initiative. Trust is really, really important to us in our environment. So we want people to know that we do trust them. We trust them to make great decisions, and we want them to go forward with that judgment, so that they can have progress individually. And then finally, my word is my bond. We make those commitments. When I was driving in and listening to your show, I heard you talking about that, when people become overcommitted.
Yeah, that was me.
And they can't keep that, right? And it's really talented, really thoughtful people become less valuable to others because they can't keep all the commitments that they're making. And it's a common problem with really well-meaning people. So we wanted people to know, hey, I keep my word is my bond.
You're right, too, and I think many people, it's a common problem because we want to do for people, and we're afraid to say no. So I always tell people, it's okay to say no. Yeah. And that's kind of what you're saying there with the show up is, it's okay to say no because your word is your bond. If you can't do it, you've just broken our daily ways. So that's kind of your parameter.
Yep.
So you're giving permission to just say no.
Great way to put it.
All right, and then your final one was support.
Support, yeah, possibly the most important. I'm not ranking them, but I live my professional life in service to others. Again, that service mentality is not just about servant leadership for us. Everyone has the responsibility to be a servant to others in our environment. I love other people's perspective, and we did want to put the word love in there because we were encouraging people to really be curious about who other people were, why they were different and individual, and how they could appreciate that. I do what's best for the blocks is a reference to our logo of the building blocks, and I do what's best for the company. And then I talk with people and not about them. It's really important to us that if we have a challenge or a criticism of someone else, we take that directly to the person so that they can learn and grow from that. It does no one any good to talk about someone behind their back.
Okay, so that must have been, one of the individuals, and we have a recording of that too, and we'll play that in a moment, regarding responsible complaints or responsible conversations or something. And I want to talk about that, but we'll talk about that in a moment. I want to talk first about, people are listening, like our caller Michael or other individuals, and they're going, well, these are all great. But my question is, how do people take such simple values, which I think all of us really should possess in ourselves, show up for people, smile for people, be supportive of one another. How can they take that and apply it to a work environment where that work environment isn't that way?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Toni. When you look at culture, people often credit the leader too much for culture.
Right.
It's like any community space that we all occupy. We all have an individual responsibility to contribute to that culture. And I think there's only two things you can do. You can't leave it neutral.
Right.
You're going to add value or you're going to subtract value. And we have to look in the mirror and say today when we go to the parking lot, did I add value today? Did I help other people? And we all have responsibilities for that. So I think that's looking in the mirror is the first step.
I completely agree. And if you got to do it, you have to focus on you doing it. And hopefully other people will follow. And if they don't, it's okay, because really you get to go home a better person.
Yep.
And that's what's important. So the next thing is, I heard this term that I found interesting, and I want to talk about this a little bit. But for my listeners, again, if you have questions, you're welcome to call at 313-272-5600, or you can go on Facebook at Toni Cooper Performance Facebook page and ask questions or message me there, and we'll answer them. but this responsible conversations. And I have never heard that term, and I teach communication all the time. So I'm like, I'm stealing it, and I'm going to use it now because I think it's interesting. But I think that we're talking about business, but we can apply this concept of responsible conversations with our friends, with our family, with our children, with our, in work. I think this is a discussion that I want to talk about. But what is responsible conversations?
Yeah, I think there's a sender and a receiver. You teach communications, you're an expert, Toni, and so we want to place the responsibility on both parties and really make sure that that person has some foresight and insight into what they're going to say, right? I'm going to script this conversation because they anticipate that it's going to be difficult. So they know how the first 60 seconds of that conversation are going. They're really thoughtful about it. And I think it's important to determine the culture of the organization. How does conflict occur within the company? Sometimes you get what people refer to as a unicorn culture, where people anticipate, well, I can't say anything negative to this person, or I can't say anything challenging. We have a position within every meeting that's a devil's advocate, that we really respect that person. They're there to look for what are the pitfalls that we might hit down the road, because we really are a group of people that's thinking very positively.
Great.
So we have to consciously assign a position.
So you actually pick somebody that says, you get to pick all the roadblocks, the obstacles. I so want that job once in a while. Okay. I just want to come in and do that just one time. Okay.
So yeah, some people are drawn more naturally to it.
I'm not. I just think it'd be fun to try it.
I think, yeah, for those of us that aren't like you, Toni, it is fun to take our normal hat off and put that hat on.
Yeah, because I don't think it would be easy to do, but I love the challenge of trying something like that.
We recognize where we might be weak with a really positive culture, and we try to supplement that.
That's great. So let's hear what one of your employees said about what responsible complaints are, and then when we come back, we'll go further on that on the Toni Cooper Show.
Great.
This idea of responsible complaints. And for us, what that meant to me was our daily way of I talk with people, not about them. Kind of the behaviors that we try to model underneath that is that when I'm showing up and I'm supporting other people, a way that I can do that is I can go directly to them with an issue or, an idea that I have, an area of improvement, versus just building a culture around, well, Rob's not doing a very good job and I wish Rob would do this. I think too often, it's a terrible example because Rob would never do that. And I think just knowing that we have the trust, the culture here, and the reminder to say, hey, is it fair to talk about Rob in that way without having a great conversation with Rob so that we can grow as an organization, I can grow as an individual, and Rob can grow as an individual as well.
The best in inspirational talk. It's the Toni Cooper Show.
So I am joined by Kevin Schnieders, from the CEO of EDSI, which is a workforce development company headquartered in Dearborn, Michigan. And the reason that he's on is we are talking about the importance of developing a positive culture. And as Kevin alluded to before, that the leader is the one that can start it, but the people are the one that continue it. And we're focused on these 3 values that the company has, which is show up, smile, and support, and what that means. And we talked a little bit about what that means, and we talked about the boundaries. And what I want to do is I want to talk about how that actually can apply to our home life. And when we think of, we've had experts on parenting and things on the show, and I think even for me, I have a 6 and a 3-year-old, and I know you have children, and we create boundaries and we try to be consistent. Parenting's not the easiest task. To me, it's the hardest one of everything I've ever done. But that's what show up, smile, and support is here's the 3 things we're gonna do, and then the daily ways are these are the boundaries. And so we asked your people, and we'll get into the daily ways at home in a moment, but I want you to talk about how can we take our environment at work, this positive culture, and what are the things that you have in your work environment that you can apply in your home life?
Yeah, thanks. And I love that focus that you have, Toni, too, because there's so many parallels between leadership and parenting. And we train our managers on a lot of parenting techniques, essentially. And it doesn't mean that they treat people in a condescending way or they treat them like they're children. I treat my children with great respect. I have 2 beautiful girls, Lauren and Riley, who are only 10 and 7 right now. And I think that I know we have family values, right? We don't talk to them about them in that way at 10 and 7. We ask them questions. So our family values at home are respect for self, respect for others, and responsibilities for all your actions. So we'll ask our girls very intentionally at dinner, what did you do for someone else today that was kind? Every night. And they know the question's coming, so they have an answer. What did you do for yourself today that was fun? And is there anything that you want to talk to us about that you're particularly proud of, or something that you'd like a do-over on? So we're very intentional about taking those values at home, and they just happen to be defined a little bit different. But again, we're building that expectation for the kids on what we can't, they can't be responsible in every way. They're going to make mistakes. They know these are the things that are most important to us.
And I tell people this all the time, but I think so many people try to separate their work from their home life, and obviously you got to separate the negativity, but you can take the lessons learned and apply it in every area of your life. And I love the statement, what's your do-over? Because my 6-year-old son, I've always asked him, he's only in kindergarten, but when he comes home and is like, what made you happy today? And if I don't ask, he'll say, are you going to ask me what made me happy? And then sometimes he just doesn't want me to ask that question, But you're right. So when those you're listening, when you're looking at your home, is what is the culture you're creating in your home? We focus so often on what your work environment culture is and how to improve the business, but take these same principles and apply them to your home. So we asked your employees, how are they applying it at home? And I thought you'd be interested to hear what they're doing. So we're going to hear right now how they're implementing the daily ways to their home life.
Soon after I arrived here, learned about the Show Up, Smile, Support values and the daily ways behind them. I stole it and used it to give to all the parents of one of the teams that I coach.
Okay.
Right, because it's pretty easy to show up, smile, and support your player and the team.
My wife and I talk about this in terms of how we relate to our families. The same one that I touched on before. I talk with people, not about them. I think it's a great reminder for us to have great conversations with our families. With your mother-in-law, with your mom, with for me personally, I'm looking at Rob and he's feeling awkward. Yeah. But I think, some of these principles can definitely translate to having healthier relationships outside of work.
For me, I think my word is my bond is very important for my family. If I promise to do something or offer to be somewhere, I'm definitely going to be there. And so I try to support them in whatever way I can. It's also about finding solutions. So we have one that says, I wonder, and I find myself using that at home all the time to sort of support and thinking through solutions with my daughter, who's very young, but just helping her find those solutions by continuing to say, I wonder, how could we come to a good solution? I wonder, what if we did this, and how can we do this? So that one has really taken heart. I find myself saying, I wonder a lot, and now my family does it as well.
Our house, we don't have the 3 S's, but we have the 3 C's. So it's care of self, care for environment, and care for others. Nice. That I felt like a lot of those values that I wanted to instill in them could fall within, each of those categories.
For me, it's put me in a state of appreciation more and allowed me to better measure how much I do appreciate my opportunity, my work. And when you're in these other environments, you don't wish that they had the same thing because it wouldn't work for them, and you are aware of the differences in what we have compared to other places.
All right, so what's your response on how they apply this to their home environment?
Yeah, it's just so much fun to listen to them. It doesn't surprise me in any way about what kind of intentional people they are and what kind of intentional parents they are. It's as I said, it's a blessing to know them and to get a chance to meet with them every week and every day. So I think that I love the fact too that they're customizing it to what makes sense for their family, right? And if it works right out of the box, great. And if it doesn't, they're customizing it. There's listening to them too made me think about, again, who they each are as individuals and how impressive they are. Your kids, like employees, watch leaders more than they listen to leaders, right? So they're watching what we do more than they hear what we say. And being that example that you've talked about earlier in the show, Toni, about how we can just serve as that great source of positive energy, and a positive example in their lives is far more important than the words that we use with them. That's true in leadership at work, and that's certainly true as parents.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. And I love the other, Rob, I think it was Rob, that he says he uses it as football and other things. because I come from a figure skating coach background, and I think you can. Things that we forget is when you work in a great environment, or if you are like me, I read a ton of business books. All of those principles can be applied to the sports. It can be applied to your home life, and what an environment you could create in your home if you actually supported one another, lifted each other up. Your word was your bond. And I want to talk about that for a moment with the home, if that's okay. But
sure.
We talked about this show up, and I find this quite often in people that I talk to and people that are called the show talking about this. At work, our word is our bond. We say it, we do it, da-da-da. But how often at home does a kid come up to us and say, Mommy, Daddy, can you help me? Yeah, sure, I'll be there in a moment. I'll be there in a moment. And then really it's not a moment. It's 10 minutes, it's 20 minutes, it's 3 hours, So I'm going to tell you what I started doing in my home to fix that. And I don't do it always. I'm still working on it. They're only 6 and 3. I got some time. But I started to put time to it, even though I don't know time. But when my son comes to me, because I have to really work on that follow through, because I wasn't good at it before. And so if he comes to me and says, Mom, can you watch this? I'll say in 2 minutes, and I mean 2 minutes, or in 3 minutes, or in 1 minute. And sometimes he'll get the timer out, the little kitchen timer, and he'll say, here's it too. And so it's interesting that we really have to be conscious to do these things. Yep. It's a conscious effort. So I want people that are listening to realize that this positive environment, this culture, these values, it's not, I would think, Kevin, you didn't wake up and it just comes to you naturally.
Right.
All the
sure.
time. You have, and it might now because you've been doing it.
No.
But it is a conscious thing.
Yeah, we make those choices, right? We make the choice, even though we might be naturally a more positive person, you make the choice in the face of adversity to remain positive. And yeah, I love what you're saying with your son, too, because you're setting proper expectations, which, again, is synonymous with leadership. It's one of the most important things we can do as a leader is to set clear expectations. We have a saying that we use a lot at work that is happiness equals expectations divided by reality. How clearly did you set those expectations? How did you meet those expectations for people? And little kids, especially, Toni. Our oldest daughter said to me, you lied. Why did you lie? And they take it so personally when you don't show up for them. Yep. They really don't they don't differentiate between true lies and you not holding your word as your bond. Right. And the fact that she could tell you lied says a lot too, because not everybody can do that. They'll go tell their sister he lied. Right. So so when you, for your company, and I just want to go through this a little bit. What would you define? Do you believe that everybody is a leader? How do you define leadership? Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we got to the point where titles aren't important to us, and then we realized, we have to have some kind of organization. You have to have some org structure. So yeah, we definitely have direct reporting relationships where there are supervisors, there are managers, there are leaders. And what we try to do, though, for people is to really drive home the point of servant leadership in that, for example, when a manager gets a new appointment to a manager position, we promote from within so frequently. And I'll get on a video call with that person for an hour and just answer questions and listen. And I always say the same thing when I start the conversation. Congratulations, you now have less power than you ever had since you started with the company. We're not asking you to lead with authority and power. We're asking you to lead with influence. Right. Create relationships with people, care about them, show them that you care, and listen to them. You work for them, though. Let's not misunderstand that. So our leaders are servant leaders who work for the people that they're serving. And so everybody that's doing maybe direct work today knows that they have a champion. They have a sponsor in the organization. We don't talk about it in terms of this person will ascend to leadership. We talk to people about, we think you are in a great position to be a leader in our company because your natural strengths are aligned with what we're looking for in leaders. And so we talk about it that all of us lead and have certain points of accountability that we will absolutely be responsible for. So what is your advice to people that are looking to grow, even in your own company, but even people that are in other companies, to strive to be a servant leader? What advice do you give them? Yeah, understand it, really. There was a point where someone came up to me. I didn't find servant leadership. Someone pointed it out to me as I was speaking at one point, and I was just speaking extemporaneously, and they said, well, it's a pretty simple servant leadership model. And I said, I'd never heard of it before, and just started diving into the books. As you said, what is this thing? And so there are great resources that I would definitely, I'm a big education fan, so dive into it, read as much as you can. And then for there, once you understand the principles, that you're knocking down barriers for people that you lead, you're being there for them when they need it. Define it yourself, right? How do you understand it? What does it mean? And then make sure that you get those simple values that communicate to people how you're living servant leadership every day.
And communication. Here we go. It's always about communication, isn't it? And so let's go further in this. And I wasn't going to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you now. And so, and we'll talk, and you can answer it when we come back. But I want to talk about generations. Because that's something that I'm getting the question of quite often, is people come to me and they say, well, the younger generation doesn't want to work, and they don't want to do this, and they don't want to do that. I don't completely agree with their statements, but let's talk about leading. When we come back, let's talk about the leading of, is it different for different generations, and are you noticing any differences between generations, the gaps and things of that nature? We'll talk about that when we come back on the Toni Cooper Show. So you're joining the Toni Cooper Show, and I am joined by Kevin Schnieders of EDSI, and we are talking about servant leadership, what leadership's all about, and a question that I get quite often from people, not necessarily a question, it's a statement of, it's too hard to manage the younger generation, nobody wants to work, all they ever want to do is play on their phone, and yada, yada, yada. And I know you have multiple generations in your company, so tell me, do you lead them differently? Do you notice a difference? Just give us your perspective on the multiple generations.
Yeah, thanks, Toni. It's Rob, one of the individuals that you met with, has a phrase that he uses all the time, same but different, right? It's the same but different. I think generationally, a lot of it's the same stuff, right? We all have the same basic aspirations to have success, to want autonomy, to get fulfillment in our lives and have a purpose. And it might be different in terms of the way that we find that. So you can't ignore the impact of technology. And that old saying, if it was here before you were born, it's not technology.
Right.
So it just is, right? For the younger generation, they are used to being able to have constant access. And we try to make sure that for us as an organization, and the thing that I would espouse for other leaders, you have to lead with trust. So don't look at that device or screen, as we call it, as something that they're using to get out of work. See it as in how you can leverage it as a piece of technology that can help them be even more productive. And so a lot of our technical challenges, IT challenges, we look to the younger generation. I was just tweeting something this morning about your show and promoting what you were doing here, and I went to a younger person to try to make sure I had it right.
Right, exactly.
I still look for that affirmation. So am I doing this right? And I think so. We have to see again, what are their strengths? How can we leverage those strengths? There are absolutely generational differences. Understand them and figure out how they can be most helpful for the company.
You're absolutely right. In the job I'm in, I'm required to learn this stuff, and so I'm learning as we go. But you're right. I think you made a very good point, is trust. And maybe that's what many people are missing, is just trust that they're using it in a positive way to help the business, not because they're just doing it. And then you did a same but different. Everybody wants things. They might be different things that they want, but they want something.
Yep.
And you're right. So I think that's a great point. And if we take it further, I do want to make sure that we hear what your employees said of what leadership means, because I think what's interesting is we had a couple of different generations that I was interviewing. There are different age groups and things, but it was fascinating to me that how similar their definition of leadership was. And I think that's an important aspect that we all need to realize, is whether you are a parent, whether you are in the lowest position in your company or the highest position in your company, the definition of leadership everybody can strive for. And there's a commonality amongst their answers that I'd love for you to hear, and then we can touch on it in a moment. So let's hear what their definition of leadership is.
To me, it's authenticity to self. I think more than anything, both at work, outside of work, your passions, your hobbies, your family, all that has to be authentic to the way you're treating people in the workplace, and it has to be consistent.
I think leadership is giving people what they need to be successful, whether personally or professionally.
I would say leadership really is how we define it here, and that's really what I've tried to do at home is servant leadership, like being able to serve and not asking of others something that you're not willing to do yourself.
People don't care what you have to say until they know that you care.
And so there was a commonality, and we edited some of it just to get some of their answers, but that you care, that you're authentic, that you're transparent, that you're true to yourself. And that was at least 3 different generations that gave that, but there's a commonality. And what do you think about those responses?
Yeah, amazing, right? I think it's definitely consistent with how we're trying to lead at EDSI, and so heartfelt. You can hear it in their tone and what they're talking about. The authenticity, I think, is really, really critical. I didn't come from a classic business background, as we talked a little bit about, Toni. I went to a liberal arts school at Albion College and was trained to do lots of things.
Right.
I didn't have a technical business background, and so I came to it learning every day. And I had to be myself. And it was very much trial by fire, if you will, to experiment and figure this stuff out. So it gave me a natural authenticity that at first was necessary, because I just no one else had told me to do it differently. And I think that's worked out in my favor personally, because it became something very easy to be leading authentically. Now, again, you have to have people that allow you to do that,
right,
and allow you to support that. My dad was a phenomenal leader, and we led very differently. That doesn't mean good or bad, it just means different. We had an organization that was growing at the time, and they accepted a new leader. And I just said, hey, I want to, just give me a chance, and I'll prove to you that my motivations are pure, and I want to do right by you. And they gave me that chance. If you never get that chance, how could you be successful? So I'm eternally grateful to the people of EDSI for letting me have a chance to lead authentically.
So let's talk about you for a moment, if that's okay. So tell me, because how long have you been at EDSI?
22 years.
And then how long have you been in the leadership role?
Oh gosh, I purchased the company in 2007.
Okay, so how would you say you've grown personally from when you started in the leadership role to today?
Gosh, tremendously, right? Every day.
Right.
I really do believe that, Toni, and just the blessings to find great mentors, great people. I went back to school. I went to Northwestern and got another degree, and that changed me as a leader for sure. I know today that I'm a better leader because of that experience. Coming into contact with unbelievable people, figuring out what they're doing and what I can learn from that. I refer to it as you stew.
Okay.
We're all making our own recipe, right? I don't know what you're putting into it. What I put into it is the positives that I can take away from people that I admire, and then try to make it my own recipe, because I have to lead with it authentically. And so I've just been so blessed to meet people, listen to them, ask great questions, listen intently, and really apply that to the work that I'm doing.
So what's the greatest lesson you've learned?
The power of the question. Yeah. I think for me, right, is to not talk so much. My mom would say that I have the Irish gift of gab, right? And at the same time, it's so important to be just thoughtfully quiet. I meditate today as a leader, right? That wasn't present 7-9 years ago. So I think it's really important. I will be frank, and I'm prayerful, in my leadership, right? So I ask for help, I ask for guidance, and I listen a lot better than I used to, and that's been a great blessing.
Yeah, I work on that listening skill because my job is to talk, right? So going home and listening is something I have to do. Yes, So I think that there's a big aspect that everybody needs to realize is where you are today doesn't have to be the person that you are tomorrow. And each person listening, if you're not happy with who you are, you have the ability to change it. And I ask everybody that's on my show, how have they grown or how have they changed? And I wanted to ask you because I want people to realize is that you don't have, just because you're talking to somebody who is doing something that maybe you want to do, you can do that too. It's not like you woke up and boom, everything was there. You worked at it.
For sure.
It wasn't easy.
No, the growth comes from being uncomfortable, right? When you get to that point of disjuncture and discomfort, that's when you grow.
Yes, that's a great statement. The challenges make you grow, the obstacles make you grow, the lessons learned make you grow. And so I want to share this because we're leading right into this. This is my favorite part of this interview that I interviewed your team on. And I asked them how they have grown from when they started to where they are today. And I think it's really neat because some of them have been there, it was their first job. One of the individuals, your company was his first job and he's been there. And another person, they've only been there a few years. So I want you to hear how they've grown. But my listeners, I want you to realize is that you are not stuck with where you are right now. If you're unhappy, you can change. It's an attitude shift. It's a constant shift. You can make yourself whoever you want to be. And just by hearing people grow, realize that even though the company helped them grow, they had to make a conscious effort to grow themselves. They chose not to sit on the couch all day and watch TV. They chose to make a change. So while Kevin had some impact, while EDSI had an impact, and they're going to credit that, understand that they didn't credit themselves, but they should have. Okay. So let's hear what they had to say.
I became probably the husband that I'll become, the father that I'll become. I mean, for me, my whole adult maturation process took place in these four walls.
Confidence over the last several years, just in the growth that we've had and the success we've had. So a lot of confidence, not just in myself, but in what we do and how we do it at EDSI. And two, I'm a better person outside of work because of the culture that we have and the people that we work with.
Two primary areas of growth for me would just be self-awareness, and maybe that's just a subset of emotional intelligence.
I've learned a lot about my strengths and what makes me happy, what I want to do in a job. It's the first time that I feel like I really am working to all of my strengths and able to do new things and expound on those. And I'm happy coming to my job every day, which is great.
So it's I find it interesting. I love, especially the first answer. You know, my whole life was defined by this job, and the impact that a company, your work environment has on who you are is fascinating to me. So I know you have a response to that. So go ahead.
Yeah, Toni knows I have a response because I'm pushing back the tears in my eyes. Right? I mean, this is sincerely, it chokes me up to hear those people talk about it in that way, right? And so, you know, Jen, Arlene, Casey, Will, Rob, they know I love working with them. They also know that I love them. And to hear the impact that we can have collectively as an organization, that is what it's about. It's not about profit margins and the things that we have a responsibility to discuss. It is about making an impact on one another and each other's lives. And the gift of life is so brief. And if we can have that impact on one another, to hear them articulated validates that we're on the right path. And I promise them and everyone in the company that I will dedicate every day that I have professionally to getting better, smarter, faster as a leader and improving for them, because that's my responsibility. I am there for them. And I just, sincerely, it touches me and means so much to me.
And those of you that are listening, and I know some of you are saying, well, this is all fine and dandy, this isn't my work environment, and these are great. I want to challenge you and realize that you can make that same impact on people outside of your work environment and within. You know, you have the ability to impact every single solitary person you touch, and to help others grow and to become better people. And whether it's your children, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your friends, or it's your coworkers, you know, one of the things that I've talked about is I have a training that we do called Taking Out the Trash, which is taking out the negative and replacing it with the positive. And I want people to realize is that you can help people do that. And so when you're listening and you're saying, well, that's not my company, and I'm not growing like that, realize that you have that same impact on the people that you touch every single day, from the cashier to your home, because you'd be amazed. And don't wait till somebody dies to let them know how they've improved. It starts today, and I want people to realize that. So I want to give you a moment to just tell us anything that you would love listeners to know, like whether it's advice you'd like to give, something that is on your mind that you want to tell the listeners.
Yeah, and I've been inspired, you know, listening to your comments today, Toni, and you do a phenomenal job. I think you're helping your listeners. You're a blessing to them. Thank you for the work that you do. You touched on it, right? They can be the change. I'm blessed to do a lot of career coaching and people in transition that have been laid off or, just in a bad work environment. And I do try to coach to the idea that the easiest thing to do is to change the job that you have. Might not feel that way. Ultimately, though, if you can't find that success and happiness at work, we have a saying at EDSI that our employees vote with their feet. We really track who's leaving and why. And we do exit interviews with everybody very sincerely to figure out what's wrong with our environment in that particular location. How can we fix that? So don't be afraid to find the environment that's best for you and fits best for you. That's not condemning the place where you work. It's just saying it's not a good fit for you. There's a great book, The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acor, and he talks in that book about how the low-grade stress, consistent stress, is so damaging for our health. There's a statistic in the book that says the people who have bad bosses are actually 53% more likely to have a coronary event in their 50s.
Wow.
We are literally killing people through bad management. And in that way, tremendous responsibility that we have in leadership. If you're feeling that low-grade stress, though, you owe it to yourself to get out of that environment. I would implore your listeners to find the place that fits and that they can find their happiness and purpose in their work, because it really isn't healthy for you to stay.
So what advice do you have? So let's pretend it's me, and I say I don't like where I'm working. What is the steps that I should take to get out of that environment?
Yeah, get online, start doing research, right? Because there's so much access that we have to information now. Go to our website, just Google EDSI. We have so much information on there about who we are. I hope other companies are doing the same thing, and you get insider information from what they're conveying and sharing.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We're gonna come back and we have a nice little tribute that they gave you that we're gonna hear, and we're gonna get Kevin's final thoughts in a few moments on the Toni Cooper Show.
The best in inspirational talk. It's the Toni Cooper Show.
Thank you so much. Thank Kevin. We have one more recording, and it's a thank you recording, and two people had a little thank you that they wanted to give you. So we're going to play that in a moment. Again, we were joined by Kevin Schnieders of EDSI. You can go to the best thing you can do is you Google EDSI, and it comes up first, but it's EDSIsolutions.com to learn more. There's tons of videos on there, and quite honestly, if you have no interest in EDSI, you can go to those videos just to be educated on how to grow, how to be a better person. So you go to EDSIsolutions.com. There's a bunch of videos on there. There's a bunch of what their beliefs are, and then also if you're interested in knowing more about what they do or being a part of EDSI in the workforce development, you can go there also and get information. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. I want to let you hear what they have to say, and I'm going to allow you to respond. Not allow you, but give you an opportunity, like I'm dictating you, but give you an opportunity to respond. So let's hear what I asked your staff. As I said, same thing I said to you. All right, it's open mic. What is it that you want to say? Anything that you want to say. So I didn't tell them now say thank you, just so you're aware. I told them, whatever it is you want to say, go ahead and say it. And this is what they had to say.
I think Kevin has been, he's been ahead of the curve for a long time in terms of developing culture, organizational culture. And I think, Kevin was the same person 5 to 10 years ago when some of these concepts were less popular in the business world. And so I think he is a true example of an authentic leader.
Yeah, I would just say thank you to Kevin. I feel really fortunate to see all the hard work. I think a lot of people in this room see all the hard work that he does that no one else sees. So it's not like he's just sitting there and these ideas are coming to him. He's putting in the work. He's researching. He's developing. To me, it's watching all the hard work he puts in to get there that he doesn't want people to see and how much he cares. So that's why I would say thank you for setting a work example of what is a hard day's work and just everything he does for other people, not himself.
So I'm going to give you the mic. Go ahead.
Gosh, yeah, it's overwhelming. Again, the respect that I have for the people that you had a chance to meet with, Toni, it's overwhelming to hear their thoughts and comments. And they know I'm never comfortable when they're directed at me, and it's awfully nice too. They did a great job with your question of, hey, you have one chance, it's an open mic, of demonstrating gratitude. Right. It's so critically important. I heard you talk about that on your show, and it's really important to demonstrate that everything that I'm able to accomplish in my life is a blessing from God, from my parents, and what they gave to me, what they sacrificed for me. And every person that I meet, whether it's you, the people that I get a chance to work with, it's a blessing. And I'm just working through some stuff myself, trying to figure it out and apply what I've learned from others and make it fit for what I'm comfortable with. But it's the overwhelming sense of gratitude that I have for the people that I serve and the people in my life is could not be more sincere.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin. I appreciate the opportunity to interview your employees. I will always know them. And Rob, if you're listening, I hope you're reading the book. Okay. And so I appreciate each one of your staff, every one of your employees, and the environment that you've created. And I appreciate you coming today and talking with us. And again, it's EDSI, EDSIsolutions.com is their website if you want to be educated even further beyond what we've already talked about. And again, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Toni. I wish everyone could see what you're doing here because you do a phenomenal job.
Thank you. Everybody, we will come back in a few moments on The Toni Cooper Show.